Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Bearded Mystic Podcast, and I'm your host, Rahul N. Singh. So, yesterday I spoke about how things have changed after I watched a reaction video that I did of a reaction to a reaction video of a video. Anyway, I did a reaction to a video, and Liam, my good friend, or known as Yam Socks, he did a reaction of my reaction. Yeah. Anyway, so he did that, and obviously that meant that I kind of watched my video again, and I'm gonna post that video in the video description and show notes. So do check that out, and if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel. Make sure you like this. If you want to join my Discord server, the link is below. If you want to support the podcast in any way, there's all that information is below in the show notes or the video description. So make sure you do all those things before you do anything, and make sure you do leave a comment at the end of this video. It'll mean a lot. Or if you can leave a review and rate the podcast on whatever podcast streaming app you're on. Yeah, I should always do that. I always forget to do that. So, but yeah, anyway, back to the reaction video. So, obviously it meant that I kind of watched what I said. And one thing I said in there was that we should always look for similarities. And recently, obviously, there's, been some YouTube drama and involved Artem initially, and then things got sorted out, and this was actually after his roundtable discussion with me months later. So I'm talking recently, as in like maybe within this last month, and he was on the podcast with Shiva. I watched that, and there's always certain things which I will probably probe him more on, and not necessarily disagree, but probe him more. I don't think you can actually truly disagree with someone completely, because what I found, and when I reflect upon my own journey, the things that I agree with, many years ago, I don't agree with now, and things that I disagreed with, I now agree with. So it's kind of like either you evolve in terms of your understanding, or you have an experience which kind of makes you feel different. So this was an experience that I had when obviously Liam Yam Socks, he did the reaction video, and I mentioned there, see the similarities as regardless of what tradition you belong to. Now Artem obviously doesn't, he claims he doesn't belong to a tradition, so we take him on his word on that. So he doesn't belong to a tradition, that's fine, but he obviously borrows from different traditions, and that's a good thing. He sees what works for him, and that's his teachings. So when he did the roundtable discussion, and obviously there was a war in the comment section, even on emails, personally we exchanged a lot of messages, and it became rather toxic. He even made a complaint about me to the ASI, the Association for Spiritual Integrity, because I hold myself to certain guidelines, because if I'm teaching on YouTube or on a podcast, I should be held to a certain standard in my honest belief. So he made a formal complaint about me. I had a discussion with the ASI, and we dealt with that. And when I reflect upon the roundtable discussion, I think I was rather fair to Artem. I thought there was no problem in the actual videos, it just when he got to the comment section. And one thing that he kept mentioning, and I think maybe it could have got rid of the conflict a lot quicker, and this was by his suggestion, that we go on video and we work it out. Now, I think the reason why I resisted was because I didn't like the way he claimed that he could just make people cry if he just stared at them. I didn't like that. I felt that that was a rather kind of obnoxious thing to say. Now, I probably should have understood his intent. He may not have been coming across. He may not have had like any element of being obnoxious, but it came across that way. So obviously I watched his video with Leo and Shiva, and I consider Leo and Shiva my good friends, and I really like Shiva. I think Shiva's the one guy where I don't know where he's going to take his YouTube channel, but all I know is he's willing to ride the wave, and he has done a pilgrimage to Kailash, where Shivji's abode. Totally respect him for that, and that's not easy terrain to do, so I hugely respect him. He has Sadguru as his guru, and I think anyone that has a guru is and always gives thankfulness, I think should be appreciated and honored, in my opinion. But that also means that you represent that person and that lineage and that tradition. So, and I'm sure he's aware of that too. And he exposed an ex-non-dual teacher as well, who now claims to be the second coming of Christ. So yeah, he initially had one conversation with Artem that was taken down. That video was taken down because Artem claimed that put a claim through, and YouTube took the video down. And it was just interesting to see Artem go 180. Like when they did an interview with him, he then kind of was much nicer, much more pleasant, while when he didn't know he was being recorded by them, he was different. Now, who knows who was right or who was wrong, but for me, whether you are being recorded or not, like me as teaching here on YouTube, and obviously if I have a one-on-one meeting with anyone, it's recorded. I record all my conversations. They are, if that person allows me to publish those meetings, I'm happy to do so. Like there's no, I shouldn't be like one person on the camera here and another person when I think I'm not being recorded. I've got to be the same and be consistent, because how else are you meant to be integrated into this understanding, into this realization? So for me, I would like to know why Artem showed two different sides and what that represents in terms of a spiritual understanding, not necessarily the social dynamics. That's pretty obvious, but what was the spiritual dynamics in what he was presenting? Because I'm sure he knew somewhere, somehow, that he was being recorded. I mean, he recorded it himself, I think, on StreamYard, but I think he was pretty... I would like to know what went on there. But also, I think Artem may have insights, because he says he doesn't have seekers as his students. They're not looking for self-realization. They're most likely to be self-realized, as they claim. And I think he takes them on their word on that. So I would like to know more about, how to stop people going into the spiral of thinking like they're the Messiah or the second coming of Christ, or and things like that, and what triggers people to do that. He probably would have a good insight on that. The only thing I kind of also, maybe cringe when he mentions Osho, because Osho was someone, he's contradictory, and he's contradictory because he's only spoke, he never had written a book. So Obviously, views change, opinions change, beliefs change. His refinement probably as dictates what he then says in the moment. And he spoke to his students, his disciples, who he later made into friends. And when he's talking to them, he's talking to the individual, not necessarily to me or you. We can be inspired by it, but we've got to understand the context. So, he may, I remember reading a book where it was called Being in Love. And in the book, he says, do not marry. And then in the next chapter, he says, he tells someone not to divorce and to stay married. So, how are you meant to interpret that? So obviously he never said that you have to make whatever he says into a belief. The whole point is that you go find your own truth. But the only teaching he kind of kept consistent was just be the witness. And then eventually just drop the witness, because when you just let the witnessing be, and the witness just drops away. So sometimes I do cringe when he mentions Osho, because I think it kind of suits his whatever he's trying to portray, maybe. But again, these are minor points, but I kind of also appreciate that he talks about Osho, because a lot of people tend to shy away because they look at the Oregon incident and they think that should be blamed on Osho. I fundamentally kind of disagree with that. But yeah, seeing the similarities, and in the end, and one of the things that I noticed in myself, and I observed, and was probably a vasana that I had, so a latent tendency, which was kind of like to prove that other people were fake teachers. And I think somewhere I must have felt that, and especially when someone is a self-proclaimed enlightened person, I kind of now see why Artem says he's enlightened, because I don't know whether he is or not, and to be honest, only he should know that. I can't guess that. I can definitely there's certain criterias that one shows when one is enlightened, but is it for me to parade that on YouTube, that someone is fake or real? I mean, it's up to me to mention if someone's real, but do I need to say someone's fake? And that's something that I've thought about a lot, that if I call someone fake, that's opening the door to conflict. Therefore, I'm not seeing the similarities, I'm now looking at the differences, and the problem with that is only differences are seen then. So the nuance of actually praising someone goes out the window. And I guess that's what social media also wants to bring out of you. And, it kind of loves the drama. But in a way, I do feel that whatever genuine teachers there are out there, we should, and when I mean genuine, I mean they're honest. They don't see themselves as, the only enlightened person on the planet. They understand that enlightenment is the only thing here, and even those that are in ignorance are actually enlightened, they just don't know it. The whole point is to move beyond the concepts of being bound and liberated. That's the ultimate truth, and so I don't want to deviate, so I'm trying to keep coming back to my point, that in the end, those that are genuine should stick together. We should, even if somebody looks a bit weird, this is not saying Artem is weird, by the way. I don't think he's weird, but there may be teachers or people who are kind of eccentric beings, like when you look at a J. Krishnamurti, or he's probably not so much, but a U.G. Krishnamurti was eccentric, unique. You couldn't second guess what he was going to say. And those type of teachers are pretty rare, but when you find those type of people, they're pretty good to be around. They keep you on your toes. they can try to trigger you. And the question is, if you're an enlightened person, then you won't get triggered by them. You will understand where they're coming from. And I met such a person. I Am. He's called I Am. He's a Norwegian guy. And he was on Shiver's Discord. And again, I could see differences between me and him and what we believe in. But then I also see a lot of similarities. And so watching that reaction video has kind of transformed me in the sense of I want my channel to be celebrating those that even if, years down the line, if they end up being fake and they end up being in a scandal, I can always take those videos down. That's something I can do. But in the moment, I don't know that. There's been no investigations. There's a reason why I don't talk about Muji, because there's allegations about him. So obviously I'm going to be cautious about promoting someone like him. And it's just about being cautious. And yes, if someone has some sort of allegations, one should take it serious, especially when it involves women who could have been harmed. So yeah, that's really what I wanted to say was, and there's no need to kind of, and this is maybe to other content creators on YouTube, us non-dual teachers, that unless we see a scandal come out, we should give everyone the benefit of the doubt and learn from them. Let people know their teachings. You just never know what can happen. I think it's always best to be nice and friendly and try to check yourself when someone's speaking. And so yeah, me and Artem are we're going to definitely have a podcast together. We've reached out, and I've I want to move that friendship forward, and I think I want to get rid of this idea or notion of Asana that I have, that someone is enlightened, someone's not enlightened. But you know what? When you come from that perspective that all are enlightened, then, and again, the caveat is that there's no scandal about them, then one should explore. And that doesn't make me less of a person on my podcast. I'm still the face of the podcast. And I think sometimes there can be insecurity that, if I interview someone may go to them. But I have no qualms about that when it comes to, say, Swami Sarvapriyananda. I would love everyone to follow him. So or my guru, or anyone like that I've interviewed. And so I think things will change. Things will change with me and the way I see things, and they are changing. And I think it all comes from a place of peace. And so, yeah, I'll leave it at that. But let me know what you think. Let me know how you feel. This is obviously an evolution that's happened, I think. And I think it's time that when we have these ex-non-dual teachers or ex-enlightened teachers come out and say they are the second coming of Christ or Messiah or whatever, that we're all there together to help those followers or disciples that follow those people, that when they feel hurt, that we can catch them so they don't, kind of crash. We want to make sure that they feel safe with us. And I don't want my content to be and I don't want anyone to come across my content and feel, well, he's not very receptive, I don't know if I can trust him. That we should be open and helpful. So if you've been with an an ex non-dual teacher and you are looking for a home, obviously there's this podcast, there's many people that I've interviewed and who you can trust. And most of all, just thank you to Yamsocks for doing a reaction video to that and just waking me up from a Vasana, or dissolving a Vasana for me, actually. This is the refinement process. Once you realize that there is only Brahman and everything else is more or less on the relative reality, that this YouTube and all this, you can then deal with it properly and understand that that Vasana was a temporary one. It will no longer, bubble up. So obviously on the ultimate level, there's no Vasanas, there's nobody that is being influenced or moved by them, because there's no body essentially there. It's formless. That awareness that is there prior to thought, prior to being born, that famous thing, what were you before you were born? That very question that Sri Krishna asks, you've been here for many lifetimes. The whole point was to take Arjun to that point where he would think of that prior moment before being born, prior to the experience of being a conscious being, So, yeah, anyway, thank you very much for listening. See you in the next episode. Stay safe and make sure you write a comment, let me know your views, and hope to see you soon. Okay, thank you. Namaste.